25% of the world's oil flows through a single narrow waterway. Iran can close it in minutes. That's not a prediction, it's geography. This isn't about democracy. It's not about humanitarian intervention. It's not even about which side is right. War and energy markets are wired together like a bomb and its fuse. Pull the trigger in the Middle East and watch prices explode in Des Moines, Frankfurt, and Tokyo. In November 2025, the Strait of Hormuz is the most dangerous choke point on Earth. A single hostile action there could trigger a 15% oil price surge. The IMF said it, not activists, economists. You think you've seen high prices? In 1973, oil jumped 300% in 6 months. Economies collapsed. Governments fell. History doesn't whisper warnings. It screams them. And we're about to hear that scream again. Because here's what history taught us. When empires fight for energy, economies pay the price. Always.
Let's rewind. November 21, 1918, British Lord Curzon stands before Allied leaders in Paris. Oil, he declares, won the Great War. The Allies floated to victory on a wave of oil. Design. He understood what most didn't. Modern war runs on petroleum. The side with more oil wins. Period. World War I changed everything. In 1914, armies marched on horses. 4 years later, they rolled on trucks. Britain deployed 56,000 military trucks by 1918. Germany, still using horses. They lost. The math was brutal. The Entente powers controlled 70% of global oil production. The Central powers controlled barely 15%. That gap decided the war before the first shot was fired. Britain imported 827 million barrels in 1917. 85% came from the United States. Mexico supplied 6%. The rest, negligible. One German U-boat campaign nearly changed history by targeting those tankers. Nearly. Fast forward to 1973, October 17. OPEC announces a 5% production cut. President Nixon sends $2.2 billion in military aid to Israel. 2 days later, the oil embargo begins. The numbers were catastrophic. Oil prices quadrupled from $3 to $12 per barrel in 6 months. The U.S. price hit $11.65 by December 1973. Gas stations ran dry. Inflation exploded. The global recession of 1973 to 1974 began. This wasn't just economics. It was weaponization. Saudi King Faisal turned oil into a political tool. Support Israel? No oil for you. The weapon worked. Sort of. Israel didn't retreat, but the West learned energy dependence is vulnerability. By March 1974, the embargo ended. The damage? Permanent. The era of cheap oil died. The long summer of post-war prosperity was over. Times Square went dark. Americans waited in 3-hour gas lines. The economy shrank. Jobs vanished. Here's the pattern. 1914, whoever controlled oil controlled victory. 1973, whoever controlled supply controlled prices. Same game, different century. Iraq, 2003. Oil before the invasion, $25 per barrel. 5 years later, over $100. The Iraq War removed 2.5 million barrels per day from global markets. Production collapsed below 1 million barrels per day at the war's height. The long-term effects compounded. By 2008, Brent crude hit $145.85 per barrel. Spare production capacity globally, less than 1 million barrels per day. The world was running on fumes, and Iraq's oil infrastructure lay in ruins. Connect the dots. 1914, geography determines winners. 1973, cartels weaponize supply. 2003, war disrupts production, prices spike globally. Each time, the same outcome. Energy scarcity triggers economic catastrophe.
Here's how the game works today. 25% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's 21 million barrels per day. One country, Iran, controls access. One incident, and global supply drops 8% overnight. The other choke points? The Suez Canal, Bab el-Mandeb, the Strait of Malacca, the Panama Canal. Every major oil shipping route runs through a bottleneck that geopolitics can close. Who benefits? The same players as always. In November 2025, Russia-Ukraine war keeps energy prices elevated. Europe scrambles for alternatives. U.S. shale producers profit. Saudi Arabia adjusts output strategically. Oil-producing nations extract maximum revenue during instability. Between 2004 and 2007, the 6 oil supermajors, ExxonMobil, Total, Shell, BP, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, made $494.8 billion in profits during price spikes, during wars, during crises. Let's be clear, they're not evil, they're rational. High prices mean high profits. Instability creates scarcity. Scarcity drives prices up. Math. Current situation. Ukraine war disrupted 5 million barrels per day of Russian exports. Middle East tensions threaten 25% of global oil flow. China's slowing economy reduces demand, but conflicts increase risk premiums. Result? Volatile prices hovering near $80–90 per barrel. The IEA, International Energy Agency, just released 2025 projections. Energy is now at the heart of geopolitical tensions. Traditional fuel risks combined with critical mineral restrictions. Electricity grids face cyber threats. Weather hazards increase. The critical mineral chokehold. One country dominates refining of 19 out of 20 energy-related strategic minerals. Average market share? 70%. As of November 2025, more than half these minerals face export restrictions. You need rare earth elements for batteries, EVs, defense systems, AI chips, all controlled by single-source suppliers who can weaponize access. The oil crisis of 2025 won't look like 1973. It'll be worse, because it's not just oil anymore. The grid is vulnerable. In 2024, cyber attacks and weather disruptions affected power supply to over 200 million households globally. Energy infrastructure is now a military target, not hypothetical, actual. Connect the machinery. Physical choke points control oil flow. Corporate incentives favor high prices. Nation-states weaponize mineral exports. Cyber warfare targets grids. All happening simultaneously. The IEA warns, urgent energy security challenges are front and center, requiring the same spirit and focus governments showed when they created the IEA after the 1973 oil shock. They're saying it again. History is repeating, and nobody's listening.
October 1973. Egypt and Syria attack Israel on Yom Kippur. Within days, Arab OPEC members cut production 5% per month and embargo oil to the United States, Netherlands, Portugal, Rhodesia, South Africa. The weapon was surgical. Target nations that supported Israel. Punish them economically. Force policy changes through energy strangulation. November 1973, oil hits $11.65 per barrel. 6 months earlier, $3. That's a 288% increase. U.S. GDP growth? Negative. Unemployment? Spiking. Inflation? Double digits. The political cost was equally brutal. Nixon, already drowning in Watergate, watched his Middle East strategy collapse. By August 1974, he resigned. The oil crisis didn't cause Watergate, but it ensured no escape. March 1974, the embargo ends, but the damage was permanent. OPEC had proven oil could be weaponized successfully. Control the supply, control the economies. The lesson stuck. Fast forward March 20, 2003. The Iraq War begins. Oil production, 2.5 million barrels per day. By 2004, below 1 million. Nearly 60% of capacity vanished. Global spare production capacity in mid-2002, 6 million barrels per day. By mid-2003, below 2 million. By 2004-2005, under 1 million. The world had no buffer, no safety net. Prices exploded from $25 per barrel in March 2003 to over $50 by 2004. By July 2008, $145.85 per barrel for Brent crude, the highest inflation-adjusted price since 1973. Who won? ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, Chevron. Record profits during Iraq's chaos. Oil-producing nations outside Iraq made fortunes. Venezuela, Nigeria, Canada, Russia, Saudi Arabia all benefited from sustained high prices. Who lost? Everyone buying oil. U.S. consumers paid roughly $1,000 more per household in 2022 just from gasoline price increases. Multiply that globally. Trillions in wealth transferred from consumers to producers. Connect 1973 to 2003. Same playbook, different actors. Geopolitical conflict disrupts supply. Prices spike. Economies suffer. Producers profit. Consumers pay. The pattern never changes. Now, November 2025. Russia-Ukraine war? Ongoing since 2022. Middle East tensions? Highest since 1973. Strait of Hormuz threats? Constant. Ukraine conflict disrupted 5 million barrels per day. One major incident in Hormuz threatens 21 million barrels per day. The IMF warned the significant escalation could add 0.7% to global inflation and raise oil prices 15%. That's conservative. 1973 saw 300% increases. 2003 to 2008 saw 580% increases. We're not asking if another energy crisis will happen. We're asking when and how bad. History answers both questions, soon and catastrophic.
Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. The system requires instability, not chaos. Controlled instability. Enough disruption to keep prices elevated. Not enough to collapse everything. Think about it. OPEC doesn't want $200 oil. That kills demand. Recession follows. They lose. They want $80 to $100 oil. Sweet spot. High enough for massive profits, low enough to avoid economic catastrophe that destroys consumption. Defense contractors don't want peace. Peace means reduced military spending. Tensions mean contracts. Conflicts mean deployments. Weapons sales, sustained budgets. Follow the money. Energy companies don't cause wars, but wars certainly benefit their bottom lines. 2004 to 2007, $494.8 billion in profits for 6 companies during Middle East chaos. Coincidence?
Every player in this game has aligned incentives toward the same outcome: maintain tension, avoid resolution, keep prices volatile but elevated, ensure dependence continues. The trap is total. 94% of world transportation runs on oil. No alternatives at scale yet. Electric vehicles? Growing, but still under 15% of global sales. Renewable energy? Increasing, but fossil fuels still power 80% of civilization. We're locked in, geopolitically trapped, economically captured, technologically dependent. And the people who control the choke points know it. China controls 70% of critical mineral refining. Russia supplies 40% of Europe's natural gas before the war. Saudi Arabia can adjust OPEC production with one decision. Iran can close Hormuz with one order. Single points of failure everywhere. By design, not accident. Control concentrated where it can be leveraged. That's the architecture of the modern energy system. The IEA 2025 report uses careful language. Urgent energy security challenges require the same spirit shown in 1973. Translation: we're back at 1973 level vulnerability, 52 years later. Nothing fundamentally changed. We just diversified our dependencies. November 2025 energy markets show oil at $85 to $90, natural gas volatile, critical minerals restricted, cyber threats escalating, weather disruptions increasing. Every indicator flashing yellow to red. And still, no systemic change planned. Why? Because changing the system threatens every power structure built on it. Oil companies, defense industries, geopolitical hierarchies, financial markets, political careers. The entire edifice of modern power rests on energy dependence. Breaking the trap means breaking that power, which means those with power will fight to maintain the trap. They're not villains. They're participants in a system where rational self-interest perpetuates collective vulnerability. That's the uncomfortable truth. The system won't fix itself. It's working exactly as designed. For some.
So what do you do? First, understand this. You can't escape the system completely, but you can insulate yourself from its worst shocks. The pattern repeats. Geopolitical conflict, supply disruption, price spikes, economic slowdown, eventual adjustment, new baseline higher than before. Recognize that cycle. Plan around it. When tensions escalate in oil-producing regions, prices will rise. That's not speculation. It's physics. Less supply plus stable demand equals higher prices. Simple, unavoidable, predictable. Your strategy: reduce exposure to volatile energy costs, fuel-efficient vehicles or electric if viable, energy-efficient homes, diversified investments that hedge against oil price spikes. Don't panic buy. Don't panic sell. Position yourself for the cycle. Politically, demand policies that break single-source dependencies. Strategic petroleum reserves exist for this reason. Use them. Push for renewable energy, not because of climate, though that matters, but because of security. Energy independence is national security. Support infrastructure investments that create redundancy, multiple supply routes, diverse energy sources, distributed generation, not out of environmentalism, out of pragmatism. Resilience costs money now, but prevents catastrophe later. Personally, have reserves. Financial cushion for when gas prices spike and groceries cost more. Not disaster prepping, basic buffer against predictable shocks. 3 to 6 months expenses saved means weathering price spikes without crisis. Understand who benefits from instability. Follow the money. When oil companies report record profits during crises, that's not coincidence. It's business model. Recognize it. Don't be shocked by it. Most importantly, Knowledge is power. You now understand the pattern. 1914, 1973, 2003, 2025, war for resources, supply disruption, price explosion, economic damage, recovery at higher baseline. Repeat. The system won't change soon, but you can change your relationship to it. Awareness, preparation, diversification. That's your shield against a cycle that's been running for over a century and shows no signs of stopping.
The pattern is clear. The history is documented. The current tensions are real. The next crisis isn't a matter of if, it's when. But here's the difference. You're no longer blind to it. You see the cycle. You understand the incentives. You recognize the pattern repeating. That knowledge changes everything. Not the system, but your relationship to it. If this gave you a new perspective on how energy markets, geopolitical conflicts, and your wallet are connected, click subscribe, because this pattern will repeat. Understanding it is the first step to preparing for it. The investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Always has, always will.